bright, persevering,
mean, inappropriate,
determined,
different,
angry,
hyper-focused.
someone who, when you see them smile, it warms your heart.
I am Lisa Levitt, and this is my son Zachary Perez, and he was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome when he was in middle school.
Well, Asperger's was first diagnosed in 1940, and I think the range of symptoms have been from pretty mild to more severe. I think Asperger's been around for a really long time, and a lot of people were not diagnosed initially with it.
Asperger's disorder is a type of pervasive developmental disorder that really is characterized mostly by social deficits. That's probably the biggest problem that the kids that I deal with experience. They don't understand and they act inappropriately in social situations.
It's on the autism spectrum, but the kids with Asperger's have normal IQ. Many of them are incredibly bright, in fact, above average IQ. The thing that's different from autism is that their language development is absolutely normal. Where it's mostly a problem is their social, how they get along with others and interact socially and pragmatically. That's the problem.
So it's kids that are unable to make eye contact, unable to have reciprocal relationships, which means they're unable to basically make friends.
Kids with Asperger's, I think, tend to be very literal. They're literal in their actions, literal in their speech patterns. Just to kind of say, we would typically say, I got to go to the store and get some stuff. Zach would say, I need to go to Vons because I need to purchase a bag of potato chips. Lay's brand.
There are various other symptoms as well, but probably the most common symptom that goes with it is an obsession with certain things, often very odd things, like they'll attach to certain books or even really odd characters, or sometimes video games is actually a common one where they're so obsessed with video games, like a 15-year-old will be obsessed with Mario or something really inappropriate for their age level.
There was another kid that we worked with who would only eat peanut butter and jelly. There's other kids that are just super focused on specific games and are unable to move beyond that, like the Dungeons and Dragons and other games like that. That's all they'll talk about. That's all they're focused on.
And that's another part of it. They often have such narrow interests. No one's really interested in what they're interested in. You see a lot of younger kids with Pokemon cards, and once you get past early elementary or later elementary school, high school kids aren't interested in that. They're interested in girls and other things. And here's this kid that really wants to talk Pokemon cards, and that's about all. What the research is showing is that it's a neurobiological disorder that's 4 times more common in men than in women. It has a family component, father to son type of component. But what causes it, we really don't know.
It's becoming more and more prevalent. I think as people are doing more research on the autism spectrum disorders, including Asperger's, we're finding more and more kids that are diagnosed with ADHD or other diagnoses probably fit into the Asperger's category. There's
different prevalence rates. I've heard as low as 1 in every 150. The most recent research showed in 1 in 250 in the United States. It's been around for years and years and years, and until probably, I've been in the field for 20 years, and I know when I was in school I was told I would never see a kid without autism. And then it was like, oh, I'm seeing all these kids. Am I wrong? Am I crazy?
Well, when he was in elementary school, they didn't really know about Asperger's. And so they knew something was different. We knew something was different, his father and I. But they didn't really know what it was or how to help him. Initially, when he was in kindergarten, they thought, well, maybe he was ADD. But Zach we could tell he was very intelligent, that he had a way of understanding things, but not being right there in the middle of the picture like somebody who was first learning something.
Then along came Asperger's because we saw kids that were really different, but they weren't autistic, but they had, and that's when the Aspergers started getting diagnosed more and more. So to go back to your question, yeah, I think these kids have been in our regular school system for years and years. They've been the kids that didn't interact with others. They were quieter. They were reading a book. They were good students that were sort of left alone.
I've worked with kids with Asperger's for many years. A lot of the things that we do in behavioral health or in mental health is working with parents on how to accept their kids and on some levels grieve over the fact that their kids aren't, quote, normal.
I was very relieved when he was diagnosed because then we knew what it was and then to try to find avenues to get him help. Up until that point, it was very frustrating. A lot of very frustrated teachers. He didn't get off on a good foot in kindergarten. One thing that sticks out in my mind is the kids would go out to the playground and they would have these empty milk jugs that they, cut the top off so the kids could use them as scoops in the sandbox. And Zach would take that and he would put it on his head and go down the slide in it, and it would be like his war helmet or something. And, although we saw his imagination, his teacher was just baffled by it. She's like, I just don't get it. I don't understand.
As far as working with the kids itself, a lot of it is repetition. It's a lot of behavioral reinforcers, and again, just doing it consistently over long periods of time, and hopefully them picking up on what's appropriate, acceptable behaviors.
Medications can help. Some of the behavioral issues, some of the anxiety, if there's anger issues, the depression. There's a lot of comorbidity with depression in Asperger's because they want to relate socially, but they don't know how to, and they see themselves as being rejected.
Emotions. They tend to not even realize that you're having an emotion. They tend to not be able to change their own behavior based on other people's behavior. And that's part of the lack of a social understanding. There's no social reciprocity.
Because I just had a difficulty with conversation and stuff, and I wouldn't be sure what to say, or it'd be kind of hard to look at the person and tell them what you feel. I'd feel kind of distant, you'd say, and find it difficult to connect overall, and I found it to be kind of a challenge for me.
Therapeutically, yeah, very structured social skills can be really helpful. They've done a lot of taping kids with Asperger's because they don't see how they react and they don't see how other people react. So a direct teaching of this is what anger looks like, this is what happy looks like, and see how when you interacted with that person you weren't picking up on their social cues.
He worked with some speech therapists that really helped him understand and establish the give and take of conversation. And what really helped Zach come out of his shell is he became involved with the Sunday school classes at our church and then the youth group, and was in a smaller kind of an environment and a more loving environment, so to speak, than in your traditional school environment. And he was able to practice some of those techniques that he was learning with the speech therapist. And
I think most kids with Asperger's can be in regular ed classes, and I figure most of them are.
But there are kids that are Asperger's that are in AP classes. There's some reports that Bill Gates may have been Asperger's or may be Asperger's. So there's a lot of people that have been successful in society with autism spectrum disorders.
The ones that I have dealt with most of the time have been in some general ed classes, but they can't stay in a lot of them because of two areas. One is they have problems with the teacher, the other is they have problems with the other kids. And that usually is the reason why they wouldn't be able to be in a general ed class. Most of the ones that I've dealt with have been pretty good at figuring out academic things, other than abstract things. They can't figure out abstract concepts or concepts about people very well, but they're able to do the basic academic things fairly well.
Zach went into special ed in middle school when they first diagnosed this. By the time he was a senior, he was completely mainstreamed again. And he graduated, I think, about 79 in his class at Rio Mesa out of probably 400 or 500 kids.
The accommodations that need to be made for the child is consistency and really focusing on behavioral reinforcers and behavior modification. Most kids with Aspergers or autism disorders don't have the insight to be able to look at their behaviors or understand what they're doing wrong. So insight-oriented therapy is usually not successful, but behavior modification can be.
The most important accommodation would be to really explain to the teacher what the problems are going to be and not to get offended by this kid's actions. A lot of them, a lot of the problems they have are consistent, where they'll continue to have the same problems over time. So really sharing with the teacher what to expect and ways to deal with it and ways not to react to it is probably the best accommodation.
So the more that we can help them structure their time, and the more that we can help them integrate into a school setting through a student body program, through getting friends, really educating other people on how to accept people with differences.
The other is ways to try to get in between the problems that the kid has with the other students. However that may be, depending on the severity of the problem. It may be that they need a staff person around most of the time in order to mediate between the problems between the kids and them. Another way is to try to teach them social skills and how to react, and teach them how to try to read and be aware of, like, somebody's getting angry at them or somebody's getting annoyed by a behavior they're doing, in order for them to react appropriately. And that tends to be a long-term process where they need a lot of staff support in order to be taught these behaviors that will cause them not to get picked on or bullied or feel terrible and not have friends. A lot of them are very isolated. They feel very separate from the rest of the group, and they tend to understand that, not to the way that a normal person or a person without Asperger's would be, but that's one of the main problems that they have, is depression and a real lonely situation at school because they're so separate from their peers.
They're capable. Many of them are very, very capable, and I don't know any research on how many of these kids actually go on to complete college or get jobs, but I know that the students that I've worked with are very bright and definitely capable of having a job.
I currently work part-time at a grocery store as a bagger. I've been doing that since early November of 2007. And although I've had some difficulties, particularly with my boss, but I guess that's kind of normal with some bosses, but I show up for work on time, I do my work, I clock out, I'm able to do what I'm able to do, but sometimes it can be a little difficult with perceiving some things. But I guess the fact that I've been able to keep this job for pretty much 2.5 years now is something I feel is an accomplishment to myself.
The kids that I have seen, that's been based on their home lives. Like, I've had a number of kids that have come from very educated parents and their parents were, what we would consider reasonably well-adjusted. And like 2, for example, went on to college and they had the opportunity to do very well. A number of others have had parents that have a significant number of their own problems, and the kids come with a bunch of emotional difficulties as well, and those kids, I'm not so sure that they've done very well. So I guess what I'm saying is it really depends.
My overall grade point average, if I recall correctly, was a 3.6. I finished that final semester with a 3.5. It probably would have been higher, but geometry kind of just tanked it on me. I got a C in the class, but I've gone on to college at Ventura College for these past 3 years, and I'm in my last semester right now, and I'm going to be graduating with an AA.
I love that he gets so excited about things, and he's just, when he finds something he really likes, he just gets on fire about it.
So Bella, how are you related to Zach? How are you related to Zach?
Who is Zach to you? Who is he?
Zach.
And what is he? Is he your uncle?
No.
What is he?
He's my brother.
Do you love your brother?
Mm-hmm.
What do you love about your brother?
I like playing with him.
Do you think he's pretty cool?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think he's cool?
Because I love him very much.
Perfect.